Hello, this is Thanksgiving Help Hotline. How can I help save your Thanksgiving?
So, we're 15 minutes into our 4-hour ride to my parents' house.
Dude, I hear you. How many kiddos you got back there?
3, 2, 4, and 6. What do we do?
Okay, here it is. Simple. iPad and snacks. Sugar intake doesn't matter. iPad and snacks. Boom. Problem solved. Thanksgiving Help Hotline.
Hi. Look, I always end up doing the dishes after dinner. I want to be the one who gets to sit and watch football all afternoon.
I get it. Okay. Do you have the game on?
No. How do I turn it on?
Find the remote to the TV.
There are 5 remotes.
Okay, yeah, that's a problem, but here's the solution. Find the one that has the worn out buttons and is sticky.
Found it.
Okay. Which game do you have on?
It's a dark blue team and a light blue team.
Oh, bummer. It's the Bears-Lions. They're both terrible teams. So here's what I want you to do. There's going to be nothing to cheer for. So randomly, every once in a while, just yell this out. That's a terrible call. And every once in a while, utter this phrase. Da Bears, just like that. Da Bears, and you'll be good.
Thank you so much. Da Bears.
Happy Thanksgiving. Another Thanksgiving saved. Thanksgiving Help Hotline.
Hi, I've got a problem. I'm cooking Thanksgiving dinner, but apparently Aunt Karen only eats gluten-free, dairy-free, vegan, and paleo. Uncle Eric has a nut and shellfish allergy, and we've got to work around Grandpa's diabetes. What do I make?
Okay. First off, if you're serving shellfish for Thanksgiving, you're doing it wrong, okay? But let's get beyond that. It's Thanksgiving dinner. You make turkey and stuffing and potatoes and green beans and cranberry sauce, period. If you won't eat any of that, bring your own kale.
Gotcha. Is cranberry sauce keto?
Thanks for calling. Let's keep you living. Let's save Thanksgiving. How can I help you?
Okay, my wife and I are at family Thanksgiving, and it's going on 10 p.m., and we still just can't get out of here. How do we get out of here without another 3 people grabbing us to talk to us about when we're gonna have kids?
I feel you, buddy. Okay, have you tried this one yet? Well, it's getting late.
Yup.
How about the knee slap and this has been fun?
Of course.
Have you put your shoes on yet?
Well, no, not yet.
Okay. Put your shoes on and just slowly keep backing up into the door until you're outside. Just keep waving and keep walking backwards. Works every single time.
Okay, getting shoes on, backing up.
Are you in your car?
Yes, thank you so much.
Great job. Excellent. I'll talk to you at Christmas. Help Hotline.
Hi. So, I'm in the line outside of Target, getting ready for Black Friday opening to get a bunch of cheap stuff.
On
and
Thanksgiving? What is wrong with you? Doesn't your family...
Man, you gotta camp all night to get the really good deals. Anyway, we have got to figure out a plan for getting through the store as quickly as possible.
Okay, give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna pull up the blueprints for your Target. Okay, what are you after?
Okay, so it's a giant TV, for like $45. A pair of wireless headphones for $20, and a new Christmas tree that they're actually paying us to take off their hands.
Okay, I've got a plan. I got a route for you. So when you first come in, cut directly through the purses and baby stuff to get to the electronics. Don't use the actual walkways. That's a rookie move. Look, if there's other people in your way, you got to go right through them. It's all on the hips, okay? This is Black Friday. It's a contact sport. Within 8 to 10 seconds, you'll be in the Christmas section that's been set up since Halloween, and you grab that tree.
Okay, so how do I carry the TV and the tree at the same time?
Carry? You slide them, buddy. You slide them. Target has really slick floors.
Yes, that's perfect. You rock.
Thanksgiving Help Hotline, how can I help you?
So, my family Thanksgiving is always pretty heated. Our family has some big divides in politics, and dinner always gets weird when my uncle goes on a rant or my sister starts soapboxing. Some of us are very vocal Republicans, some of us are very passionate Democrats. And it usually divides us and ruins Thanksgiving, especially this year. I don't know how to approach that.
Well, that's the end of my shift. Happy Thanksgiving.
bright shining as the sun. We've no less days to sing God's praise than when we'd first begun.
Hey, welcome to Prairie Lakes Church. I'm Cody, the digital pastor here, and right off the bat, we need you to hear that we are a no-matter church. And what that means is no matter who you are, where you've been, what you've done, or even what's been done to you, God loves you and you can look for him here with us. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't even have to believe everything that we believe. We're just really glad that you're here. If you are new or even newer, I would love to connect with you and hear your story, get to know you and send you a gift. So if you let us know who you are by filling out our welcome card, it takes about 30 seconds. I'll send you an Amazon gift card here yet today. And you can get to that by texting PLC to 797979 or by clicking the link in the chat. And one of the next steps that we take here is serving purposefully. And practically, our ministries all operate here because of volunteers, because of people serving purposefully. But what we also know is when people sign up to serve on a team, Prairie Lakes Church starts to feel like home. We hear often that it starts to feel like a family, more than just a place that they attend. So if you want to learn more about how you can use your gifts, even here online, I would love to answer any questions and help you take that step. So if you want to learn more or sign up, you can again text PLC to 797979 and select that I want to take a next step. And another next step that we take here is giving generously. And when you give to Prairie Lakes Church, you partner with us in changing lives here in the state and beyond. But you might not know where to start. So on our giving page, we've equipped you with tools to be able to analyze your budget and prepare and figure out how that you could start to give generously. So if you want to give generously for maybe even the very first time, I encourage you to learn more or start by going to prairielakes.org/give. And today we are going to continue in our Full of Grace series. So let's kick to Pastor Jesse.
Hey, Prairie Lakes Church, welcome to the time of year when we are days away from Thanksgiving. Okay? Days away from Thanksgiving. Now, in all fairness, we did get lulled to sleep, I think, for a little bit. We had a bunch of dry and warm weather days all the way through October, and really, you know, some nicer ones here in November, but then last weekend, I grabbed this shot off of one of my trail cams up when I was deer hunting. Okay, so this was last weekend. Now, I'm one of those annoying people that look at this and go like, yes, more. But this is a preview of coming attractions, right? And then just a few more days after Thanksgiving, I mean, like, whether you like it or not, okay, the floodgates of Christmas season are gonna just fly open. And we'll be kind of swimming into the end of the year. So here's the deal, okay? Here's the deal. Thanksgiving, Christmas, all of what it's going to bring our way, all of it brings with it a mixed bag, right? A mixed bag. There's some good stuff. There's some not so good stuff. There's some things that you really look forward to. There's some things that you're probably dreading. And even on a more personal note, in my family extended, we lost my dad's mom this year. So this will be the first time in 97 years that she hasn't been around the Christmas table or the Thanksgiving table with us. Pastor John lost his mom this year. You might be looking ahead at these next few days, kind of bracing for that empty seat. Okay. But also, you know, a lot of us, we're just going to get to spend like time with people that we love most in this world. And no matter how painful life sometimes gets, there's just still a lot to be grateful for, a lot to be thankful for, a lot to just thank God for, you know. So mixed bag, right? Mixed bag for sure. But as we all head into whatever we are heading into here in a few days, we just thought it made a lot of sense. To just pause and get centered around something. We just want to hit pause and take some time to get centered around something. So last week, Pastor John kicked off a very short 2-week series on grace. We just want to take some time and we want to get centered on grace. So there are a few things that he said last week that it would be really, really good for us to just be reminded of, whether you listen to it or not. So here's the first thing. He provided a definition of grace here. So grace is undeserved love and undeserved kindness from God. That's what grace is. Undeserved love and kindness from God. It's undeserved. Meaning it's not given. God doesn't give it to us because we've merited it. He doesn't give it to us because of something that we've done. It's not a reward. Grace isn't a reward. It's a gift. It's undeserved, and it's a gift of love and kindness. That's the stuff of grace. Like if grace was a present and you opened it up and you looked inside, that's what you would see. That's how it feels when you experience it. You feel loved. You feel like someone's been kind to you. And God gives us this gift of grace just because that's who he is. I mean, it's in his character. The pressure's off of us when it comes to grace. God's not more gracious with us when we feel like we've earned it. And he's not less gracious with us when we feel like we don't. Again, that is reward and punishment. It's not grace. So that's some really good news, right? Grace is really good news. God's gracious with us because God is he's just gracious. We can breathe that one in and then we can kind of breathe that one out. All right? So that's the first big idea from last week. And here's the second one that we need to be reminded of as we get going as well. It's a two-parter. Here's what Pastor John said. He said, it's really hard for people around us to receive God's grace from us if they don't receive it from us, right? Like it's really, really hard for people to see how good and gracious God is if they don't see that in us. And then here's the next one. He said, it's really, really hard for you to give God's grace to someone else if you're not receiving it yourself, if you're not receiving it from him. And what we're going to do is we're going to build off these ideas. We're just going to leave them on the screen here just for a second, though, because there's a little bit of danger as we build off of those ideas this week. A little bit of danger. We're going to start talking this week about not just receiving grace, but what does it mean to extend it, to give it away, to be gracious with people. But as we start to talk about that, here's the danger for us. The danger for us is that we forget this truth. And if we just forget it, okay, we forget that we can't give it until we're receiving it, what we're going to do is this. We're going to start white-knuckling it, right? We're going to be sitting around the Thanksgiving table and your adult child is going to say something, right? Or your like racist grandparent, you know, or your super liberal aunt or your very conservative uncle or whatever it is, right? They're going to say something that just irritates you down to your core. And if you're just, or maybe this, right? Maybe there's like a messy family member who's just going to be messy. And if you're sitting there just white knuckling it, going, you know, I'm going to be gracious. That was a scary voice, wasn't it? I'm going to be gracious. You know, I'm trying my best to be gracious. I don't want to be gracious, you know. It's not really grace, right? Right? Now, what that might be is mercy. You know, what's what mercy is? Mercy is withholding the punishment that you feel like someone deserves. You know, withholding your comment. not escalating the argument when you really want to, not being judgmental, whatever. And that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to have a little self-restraint. But that's not grace. That's not grace. Grace isn't something that you try hard not to do with people. Grace is something that you freely give. That you freely give to people. All right? And first and foremost, it's something that God freely gives us. And so it's only when we receive it from God that we can freely give it to others, not because they have earned it, not because they deserve it, but because this is what God has done with us. It's who He is. It's the kind of person God is making us into being, okay? So just some reminders from last week as we start to build on those. And with those pretty firmly in view, let's take another step this weekend. Let's talk now about what is it like to extend grace? How can we be more gracious people? I was listening to a podcast this past week. I listen to a lot of them. You probably do too. But one of them that I listen to is the Unstuck Church podcast. And it's put on by the team of church consultants I'm a part of. And Tony Morgan, the founder of the Unstuck group, he was interviewing Pastor Andy Stanley, who is the lead pastor at North Point Community Church in the Atlanta, Georgia area. And North Point's been a church that we've looked to a lot over the last 15, 20 years or so. We've had our staff read several of Andy's books. We've been down to conferences there. Just been a really good church for us. But here was the topic of their conversation, okay? The topic was this: how to lead a divided church. How to lead a divided church. Sounds pretty interesting, doesn't it? It was a great conversation because North Point, like a lot of churches in the last few years of election cycles and social unrest and racial strife and the pandemic and all of the polarization there, North Point saw a chunk of their people leave for other churches. And as Tony was asking Andy, Pastor Andy, about how he received that news and how he started to navigate some of those dynamics, Andy's answer to him probably surprised a lot of listeners because Andy said he took it personally, but in a healthy way, which is like, what does that mean? And as he explained it, here's what he said. He said he personally called and talked to everyone he knew that was leaving. Personally called them and talked to them. Now you wouldn't think a guy who leads literally one of the largest churches in the whole world would take that approach, but he did. And as Andy told the story, after the person on the other end of the line got over the shock and surprise that their famous megachurch pastor was personally calling them, here's what Andy said. He said 100% of the people he talked to, without exception, 100%, were leaving for political reasons. 100%. It wasn't because of worship style. It really wasn't even because of theology, although he was careful to say a lot of the folks that he talked to felt like there were some theological aspects to their reasons. But really when it came down to it, they felt like he wasn't either Republican enough because, for example, maybe they stayed closed for too long or they closed down, period, during the pandemic. And some of them felt like he wasn't Democratic enough. Either because they reopened too early or, whatever, right? Whatever. And in light of that, in light of him not being as much of whatever he should be politically, they were concerned about, quote, where the church was headed. You get that phrase a lot. And of course, when he pressed for a little bit more clarity in that last part, they couldn't really articulate where exactly was the church headed specifically that they were concerned about. So we let that be. But at the end of the podcast, the conversation turned a lot more practical as Tony just asked him, how do we get more on the solution side of things, In this divisive world where extending grace to the other side is just about the last thing that anyone is going to suggest. How do we navigate that? And as Andy answered that, where he went to first was a passage in John 13, which is actually where I'd like for us to start this weekend. Turn your Bibles, if you would, to John 13. We're going to have some of the verses on the screen, but we do really encourage you to have one in front of you, physically or on your device. John 13. So full disclosure, okay, as we dive in, I'm borrowing pretty heavily from Andy Stanley this weekend. Not only because I thought he was spot on, but because honestly, I can't come up with a better biblical example from Jesus as to what it means to extend grace. Okay, John 13. Now listen, as you find that, I don't know how many of us are bracing for what the holidays are going to bring our way. And what it's going to be like with everybody under one roof. I don't know how many of us are bracing for that, but like just the scenarios maybe that you're running through, like someone's going to bring their sick kid. Okay, all of a sudden that's a lot more complicated than it used to be. Someone's going to come unvaccinated. Someone's going to come with an agenda. Someone's going to come maybe kind of broken, kind of messy, kind of hard to be around. Or maybe you're the messy person and you're just bracing for your judgmental family, right? Like, I don't know what the deal is, but I can't imagine a much better passage of Scripture for us to really settle down into as we look to Jesus and what he did around his table with everybody under one roof, okay? So John 13 is where we're going to be. We're going to start reading in verse 1. So read along with me if you could, and then we'll have some of these on the screen as we go. But 13 verse 1 says this: "It was just before the Passover festival, which is a meal that all the Jewish people celebrated to commemorate how God rescued his people from Egypt. Annual celebration. Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father." So it's right before his crucifixion. "Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end." So the evening meal, the Passover meal, was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. And Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and he was returning to God, which is kind of a crazy thought. And so Jesus got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, just the robe, and he wrapped a towel around his waist. And after that, he poured water into a basin, and he began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them then with the towel that was wrapped around him. So there's the story, and there's a little bit of cultural context that we're going to need to kind of dial into. So it's the Middle East. This is where Jesus is. It's the Middle East. Pretty warm climate for the most part. Everyone wears sandals all the time. And so everyone has sweaty, stinky, gross, grimy feet. Okay? Gross, grimy, disgusting feet. And it's not something that you want to smell as you sit down to eat, right? So, and this is what Jesus and his disciples were about to do. So very much like we've got, sinks and soap and paper towel dispensers or blowers or whatever here in 2021, most homes in Jesus' day were equipped with a towel and a basin for water that you just fill and wash your feet to take care of everybody's kind of stinky feet problem. But unlike today, people just didn't wash their own feet all the time. Because the culture that Jesus lived in is just different in a lot of ways than ours. But there was two probably specific ways that are relevant for this story. The first is the presence of slaves in the culture of Jesus' day, number one. And number two is this culture of shame and honor. And we got to talk about this just for a little bit here, okay? So there were slaves in Jesus' day, slaves of all kind. The one that we're most familiar with because of our history is racial. There were certainly some of those in Jesus' day, but that really probably wasn't the vast majority necessarily. There are people who sold themselves as slaves or indentured servants to pay off debts. There are people who were born into it. Whatever, they were slaves. And they were pretty common. A lot of homes had a slave, and they were the lowest rung of society. And so foot washing wasn't something that rabbis or religious teachers like Jesus ever did, okay? maybe in the privacy of their own home, but certainly not when they were out with people. Nor was it something that the rabbi's disciples would do either. Like, part of being a disciple was not washing your teacher's feet. Foot washing was a task that was so far beneath any respectable Jew or Roman citizen to do for someone else, so far beneath them that it was a task reserved only for slaves. Which brings us then to the second cultural difference here, the culture of shame and honor. So foot washing wasn't just a disgusting task, although it was a shameful task. I mean, just think about it. You're physically getting down, prostrating yourself at someone's literal feet, and it's almost degrading. Okay. I kind of want to just drive this home. Let's just think about this for a second. Think about this. What if right now in this moment, just however you're watching this, let's say my wife walked right out on the stage with me. And we've been married, my wife Erin and I, we've been married for 15 years. She is the executive director of a foundation. She's the mother to both of our children, just an accomplished, talented, smart, beautiful woman. And so let's just imagine she walks out, and let's imagine I sit down, and without any explanation, she kneels down, pours water into a bowl, takes off my shoes and socks, and starts washing my nasty, gross feet. Okay? How uncomfortable would you be watching that? Right? Like, I'm cringing physically right now, just thinking about like that, ooh, right? That's just a small taste, that imaginary extra, just a small taste of what Jesus' disciples must have felt like when they watched the most honored person in the room lower himself to do this shameful, disgusting task, and not only that, but to do it for them. I mean, take a look at how Peter responds in verse 6. Here's what he says. He goes, Jesus came to Simon Peter, said to him, he's going to wash his feet. Lord, are you going to wash my feet? Jesus replied, you don't realize now what I'm doing, but later you're going to understand. No, said Peter, you shall never wash my feet. Like, I understand exactly what you're doing, Jesus. It's pretty straightforward. And no. No way. And I think in Peter's response, you could probably read it one of two ways. The first way maybe, is he's trying to protect Jesus' reputation. Like, that's beneath you, Jesus. I mean, you don't have to do that. You shouldn't be the one doing that, right? He's trying to protect Jesus' reputation. I think there's another way, though, that you could kind of take it. Maybe Peter is less concerned about how this is making Jesus feel. And maybe Peter is more concerned with how Jesus is making him feel. Maybe it's less about Jesus' shame, and maybe it's more about Peter's. And I have a tendency to think that it's probably more like that. I think Peter feels ashamed, and I don't think he wants to confront that. And I think Jesus wants Peter to know in this moment, hey, you don't need to protect my reputation. What you need is for me to make you clean. And I think you get that in Jesus' response in verse 8. Peter says, no, you're never going to wash my feet. But then Jesus answered, unless I wash you, you don't have any part with me. And this is kind of what we talked about last week. So you can't give other people grace unless you're willing to receive it from God yourself. And you can't receive it from God. And you can't receive it from Jesus until you accept your need for it. And honestly, I think that's the thing that stands in the way of some of us taking the step over the faith line that we talk about, Like, a lot of us are in a moment very much like Peter was here, where he had to confront this shameful idea that he wasn't clean. you know? That he wasn't clean enough, that he wasn't good enough, that he had some not only dirt on his feet, but he had some dirt in his life. And this is what Jesus is talking about, right? He's absolutely using a physical example in real life to illustrate a spiritual reality. Unless I wash you, you don't have any part of me. Jesus is being really, really clear about that. And the only way, right? The only way for Peter to get clean was for Jesus to come all the way down to the lowest, dirtiest parts of him. And it's embarrassing. It's uncomfortable. You know, it's shameful. It is. It feels that way. I think it would have made way more sense to Peter if Jesus would have just pointed at his dirty feet and said, hey, buddy, those are disgusting. Clean those up. You know? It made perfect sense. You bet, Jesus. I think it'd make a lot more sense to a lot of us as well if Jesus would just point to our dirty lives and say, you go clean yourself up. But he doesn't do that. Because just like Peter's feet were going to get dirty again, the moment he stepped out the door back into the life he was living, back into the real world, right? So too are we going to get dirty as well, despite our best efforts to clean ourselves up. I mean, we cannot seem to keep ourselves clean. This was Peter's faith line moment, if you will. I mean, will you tell Jesus in this moment that he doesn't need to clean you up? Will you refuse him, you know? Or will you admit to yourself and admit to Jesus, Jesus, I need you to wrap the towel around your waist. I need you to get down. I need you to start scrubbing. Because I can't clean myself up. All right, this is the uncomfortable side of grace. This is the awkward side of grace. But this is the transformative side of grace. Here's how the rest of the story goes in John 13, okay? So when Jesus had finished washing their feet, this is in verse 12. When Jesus finished washing their feet, he put his clothes back on, put his robe back on, and returned to his place. Do you understand what I've done for you? He asked them. You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. But then he makes it so explicitly clear, okay? In 14 and 15, he says, now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I've set you an example that you should do as I've done for you. And then in verse 17, he says, now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. Do them. So not only does Jesus say to his disciples, hey, guess what? Your turn next time. Next time you're around this table together, one of you strap on a towel, literally, and get to scrubbing. Not only does he say that, but he also says, you're going to be blessed when you do it. Blessed. Right? It's going to be great. You're going to love it. What about that is so great? What about that is so great? Like, what about washing someone's gross, not just someone's, 11 other guys' gross, nasty feet? What's so great about that? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't. But that's kind of the thing. See, when it comes to grace, grace never makes much sense. But grace is the only thing that might make a difference. When there's been infidelity in a marriage, you know what? The only shot that couple has for being reconciled, the only shot, is grace. You get to a point where one person is just going to give the other person a gift of undeserved love and kindness. And there's no guarantee that it's going to work out. But there's just no way around that. In a polarized world, the only chance the American dream has of not only surviving but maybe thriving is if someone on the left or someone on the right decide, I'm not going to punch back, but instead I'm going to give each other the gift of listening and cooperating. No guarantee that's going to fix a mostly broken system, but guess what? No other way around it. At your Thanksgiving table, rather than checking out, shutting down, hunkering down on your phone, rather than getting defensive or getting judgmental, rather than just getting in and getting out, rather than just coming to be served. You know what? The only shot your friends and family might have of seeing maybe for the first time that there is a God who is good and gracious, the only shot they might have is if you, maybe literally, probably metaphorically, wrap a towel around your waist, bend down, and start scrubbing. You know, decide right now that no matter what anyone else does, no matter what anyone else says, you're going to be gracious. You're going to show up and serve. You're going to show up and engage. You're going to show up, ask great questions, and be a good listener. You're going to show up and just be a gift. Be someone a gift. Be someone who's a gift around the table. Be someone who's a gift in the room. A gift of love, a gift of kindness, whether those jerks deserve it or not, right? And listen, I want to be clear about this too. Grace isn't a guarantee. It's not. Being gracious is not the thing that's going to automatically every time make all the difference. It's just not. I mean, think about this. Jesus was just as gracious to Judas as he was to Peter. Judas goes on to betray Jesus to his literal death. Peter goes on to be the guy upon which Jesus builds his church. Both of them experience the same grace. Grace isn't a guarantee. You got to know that. The holidays might be just as much of a disaster as you fear they might be. And you might have all the grace that you decide you're going to extend to others. You may have all of that grace thrown right back in your face. That absolutely could happen. And if that happens, just know you're in pretty good company. You'll be blessed knowing that you got treated just like Jesus did. But maybe you'll make a difference. Listen, the watching world, and maybe even your world, nobody expects anybody to be beacons of grace. They just don't. Your family might not expect you to be a beacon of grace, but Jesus does. Jesus does. And that's kind of the thing, okay? This is one thing I want to leave you with, all right? The less someone expects you to be gracious, the lower the expectation they have for you to be gracious, guess what? The greater the difference it can make when you decide that you're going to give it. Surprising. So if you're bracing for Thursday or Friday or Saturday, whenever you're around the table, if you've kind of been complaining about it already, if you've been telling jokes or making sarcastic comments, not that I would have ever done that. If you're already kind of planning your exit, start planning instead to be gracious. How are you going to be gracious? How are you going to do it? Jesus modeled it to us. He commanded it of us. It never makes sense, but it's the only thing that can make a difference.
after that message, I hope we all feel more equipped, more prepared to go into our Thanksgiving gatherings here this week. But let's take a moment and just pray for those here right now. God, as we just heard about extending grace, we want to just specifically lift up our holiday gatherings this week, and just moments that could be easy for old wounds to be triggered, personal agendas to clash, or just messy relationships. God, we just pray that we would show your grace, your love, your mercy, your kindness, your love to those we encounter, so that it might even bring people to know you. So God, we ask that you would do more than we could ever ask or imagine, and we lift this up in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Kids, don't run off just yet. In just 1 minute, children's programming is going to begin, so get ready for that. But everyone else, it was so good to be with you here today. Have a great week. We'll see you back next week.
Oh no, you actually brought me pie?
Yes, and it's even homemade.
Oh, it honestly smells as bad as it looks. Do I really have to eat that?
Yes.
Are you sure? Oh, that's disgusting. I can't even believe I ate that. Do you know the only thing this pie would be good for?
No.
Smashing it in someone's face. It's like gooey. It'd be perfect.
But it smells so good. No, not me.
I should probably go help her. While I'm doing that, let's go watch this week's video. It's not looking good, everybody. It's not looking good. Sorry. I'm Erica, and I'm distraught. I just left the bike repair shop. I had to ride my scooter to get here. My bike! My favorite bike! My newly renovated classic, the beautiful bike! Is broken. There's a chance it could be repaired, but there's also a chance. My bicycle has seen her last ride. It's not looking good, guys. I apologize. I'm not very good today at showing contentment. Contentment is learning to be okay with what you have. But how can I be okay with my bike I may not have anymore? The memories. Oh, I did the wrong hand. I'll sure miss that old girl. I don't think I'll ever be happy again. Unless they're able to repair my bike. Or unless I can save up enough money to buy a new bike. But until then, I guess I'm gonna have to be sad. Because my bike is broken. Because it's broken. In today's story, we'll hear about some people who were stuck somewhere between where they used to be and where they wanted to go. If only they could have been okay with what they had in the present. Hey, I have a scooter. I can ride it to the store to go look at new bikes. Bye, guys. The store is the other way.
The Bible. It's 66 books of history, stories, letters, and poetry that fit together to form God's one big story. The epic adventure of how He created us and loves us so much that He made a way to rescue us. As we travel through the Bible, from Genesis to Revelation, we discover people who met God and found their lives changed forever. Now, for an amazing story. Inspired by the book of Exodus, chapters 16 and 17.
The Israelites had lived as slaves in Egypt for hundreds of years, but God worked miraculous signs and parted the waters of the Red Sea to lead them to freedom.
Sing to the Lord, feel the twinkling thunder, He brought Pharaoh's horses and chariot drivers into the Red Sea.
God's people were free, but it didn't take long for all that singing and celebrating to turn into whining. The Israelites complained to their leader, Moses.
You must want all of us to die of hunger out here.
Yeah, we had it good in Egypt. All the food we wanted.
You do remember you were slaves, right?
But we had so much meat we could barbecue every day.
The people continued to grumble, so Moses took their complaints to the Lord.
The people don't trust you to give them food.
I will rain down bread from heaven for you. The people must go out each day. Have them gather enough bread for that day.
Moses and Aaron called the people of Israel together to share God's words.
Come to the Lord. He has heard you speak against him.
As Aaron spoke, the glory of the Lord appeared as a cloud in the desert. Once again, God spoke to Moses.
Tell the people, when the sun goes down, you will eat meat. In the morning you will be filled with bread. Then you will know that I am the Lord your God.
Moses and Aaron told the people everything that God had said.
In the evening, you will know that the Lord brought you out of Egypt, and in the morning you will see the glory of the Lord. He will give you meat to eat in the evening. He'll give you all the bread you want in the morning.
Ha! Seeing is believing.
Then you should probably look over there.
Whoa.
A large flock of quail, more birds than anyone had ever seen, settled upon the camp like a twittering, fluttering ocean.
Quail barbecue for dinner!
That evening, everybody in the camp ate their fill, and in the morning, heavy dew settled on the ground, and as it dried, it left something behind.
What's this?
Looks like snow.
Like what?
The stuff that falls on mountaintops.
Flaky, white, tastes like honey.
This is manna. It's the bread the Lord has given you to eat. Gather only as much as you need for the day.
What about tomorrow?
Don't keep any of it until morning. God will give us what we need then.
The Israelites gathered up the manna, sharing until each family had enough.
Manna cakes, manna pudding, manna tostadas.
Manna and quail pizza.
Some people disobeyed God and tried to keep leftovers until the next day.
Ew.
But any manna kept overnight, filled with maggots.
Ugh.
As long as the Israelites stayed in the desert, the Lord provided fresh manna for them to eat every single morning.
Time to move camp.
The Israelites soon moved to their next camp in Rephidim, and although manna was plentiful, fresh water was not.
Seriously? I am so parched.
Even though God had worked miracle upon miracle and provided food from nowhere, the Israelites still panicked. They turned on Moses once again.
Give us water to drink right now.
Why are you arguing with me? Don't you trust the Lord?
Why did you lead us out of Egypt?
At least we had water there. Now we're all going to die of thirst.
The Israelites were so angry, they actually picked up stones to throw at Moses. Frustrated, Moses cried out to the Lord.
What am I going to do with these people? They're ready to kill me.
Go out in front of the people. Take the walking stick you used when you struck the Nile River. I will stand there in front of you by the rock at Mount Horeb. Hit the rock, then water will come out of it.
Thank you, Lord.
Moses called the leaders and the people of Israel together.
Come up with me to the rock at Mount Horeb.
The huge rock overshadowed Moses as he walked beneath it, walking stick held high.
Now see what God will do.
Moses struck the rock. Immediately, God caused cold, clear water to gush from the rock, forming a rushing stream below.
Not bad.
Yeah, I guess it beats Egypt. For now.
Over and over, God showed that He would care for His people. But still, the Israelites were tempted to long for what they had before, in spite of their newfound freedom.
The Israelites were slaves in Egypt, but then God rescued them and brought them into freedom. You'd think they would be overjoyed, but instead, they whined and complained about what they didn't have. Now, it's easy for us to look back at the Israelites and think, how could they act that way? Didn't they realize what God had done for them? But the truth is, we can sometimes whine and complain when we don't immediately get what we want. Sometimes we look backwards, like when we start a new school year. My teacher last year didn't give us much homework. Sometimes we look to the future, like when we're waiting for something exciting. I want Christmas to be here right now! We spend all this time looking backward and forward that we completely forget to look at what we have right now. For instance, right now, I may not have a bicycle, but I do have a scooter. What about you? Think about it. Don't think about what you don't have. Think of what you do have. It could be a favorite toy or a favorite thing to wear. Could be friends. Could be a place to sleep at night. Could be family. What do you have right now? I can tell you one thing you have, no matter who you are. You have a God who loves you so much that He sent His Son Jesus to die for you. And that will always be true. Here's the one thing to remember today. Don't miss out on what you have right now. Right now, I have a good attitude. I've got strength and energy. And I've got a scooter to ride around on. I'm so content. I'll see ya. Vroom.